Hey, I'm Susan Palmer of LeadCap Press. Welcome to my studio update. Thanks so much for tuning in. This week I want to do something a little bit different. I want to talk about the gear that I use in my online teaching and in making these YouTube videos, including my cool guitar. And I want to mention that I'm going to drop the links for a lot of these products in the description box below. And I want to note that I am an Amazon affiliate, so that means that a percentage of your total order after you click on one of those links will go to support my scholarship fund and free classes and all kinds of good stuff. So I encourage you to buy locally whenever possible. And if that's not possible, then this would be, I don't know, maybe the next best thing. You'll be supporting something that you believe in, which is quality music education for guitarists. So I'm going to start with my guitar. So my guitar is a 1959 Fender Music Master. I bought it in, I think, 2016 from a great place in Seattle called Thunder Road Guitars. I'll put that link below as well. They sell all kinds of vintage guitars, as well as I think there's some new instruments they have, pedals. They do guitar setup and repair. So all kinds of good stuff. They're in West Seattle and highly recommend them. And so I bought this guitar as a companion to my Fender Duosonic, which I bought a couple of years earlier. And what turned me on to these vintage guitars is, one, they're student models, so they're more affordable in terms of vintage guitars than, you know, the other Fenders. This was about $1,000. And whereas if you go for a 1959 Fender Stratocaster, I think you'd be paying a bit more for that. So that's one reason I was gravitated towards these. But the main reason is because the neck width at the nut is 1.5 inches, which is really, really small. And that helps me play because my hands are, you know, kind of I don't know, smaller than average size for a woman, or, you know, definitely smaller than most men guitar players' hands. So these guitars actually allow me to play a lot of things that I would be unable to play on any other guitar. But it's not just the neck width at the nut, although for me, I think that's the most important thing. The other thing is that the scale length on this guitar is 22.5 inches, which I believe is really uncommon. I haven't seen that on a newer guitar. I would definitely buy a new guitar if it had these specifications, but they just don't make them. And so I'm kind of stuck with these vintage guitars. I get some questions on YouTube or some comments about my dirty guitar neck, and, you know, it's over 60 years old. There's really not a lot I can do about that. It's just really worn in there. I had it refretted in 2020, right before the pandemic hit, which I'm ever so grateful for having done because this has been my main guitar throughout the pandemic. And it has one pickup, a single coil pickup, just a volume knob, and then my tone knob is actually out of commission right now. The wiring broke on that, and I need to get that fixed somehow. But I like the simplicity of this guitar. I like just having one pickup. There's no pickup switch that I'm accidentally hitting all the time. I like the color of it. I think it's really cool. It's an unfinished neck, or I think it was finished back in the day, but it's just worn off after all these years. So yeah, I think these are original tuners and everything. And so if you're looking for a guitar like this, I think they're a bit more expensive now than what I paid for it back in 2016, but I recommend them for people who have smaller hands or hand injuries, things like that. The amp that I use is a Yamaha THR 3011. It's a wireless desktop amp, and I have it sitting vertically so it takes up even less space on my desktop. And I like this amp because I get a really nice, clean sound out of it, and I think the wireless capability is really cool. It has Bluetooth in there, and I also have the wireless Line 6 device that charges in the amp and also allows me to just play with fewer cables. And I have enough cables when I'm teaching online, so, you know, it's just nice to have that option there. One thing I will say though, so I use this amp when I'm teaching, and while the wireless capability is really cool, sometimes if this is not being touched for a little while and then I grab the guitar, I don't get a signal. It's not, you know, it's gone into standby mode. So it takes sometimes a couple seconds of, you know, playing before it starts to be picked up. And sometimes that's not really an issue, but when it is, I tend to get, I switch over to a cable that I use. And this type of cable I really wish I had in my guitar studio because it has this really neat function. There's a little, I don't know if you can see, but there's a little movable part here that allows the guitar to be plugged in without that horrendous sound. So watch this. When I plug in the guitar, there's no awful sound. So that would be great. What I used in my studio was just a volume pedal. And whenever I saw any student getting close to inputting or outputting their guitar, I would click that volume all the way down to make sure we didn't get any loud, horrible sounds in that. So, but anyways, back to the amp itself. I'll put the settings that I use, the configurations of that at the end of this little clip here. I have a little compression. It just takes away the buzz from a single coil pickup that I tend to pick up. Just the nature of this old guitar and, you know, single coil versus humbucking pickups. And I use a little delay, actually, I think just a little reverb on there. I have it set to the crunch setting, I believe, so that I can just get a little more power with it. The clean setting just felt a little weak to me. So I like to have just a little bit of a boost, but I don't use a lot of distortion with it. You can, it's got incredible sounds on there, but I'm just more of a kind of clean, I want a little crunch there, but very, very subtle. So anyways, you can see what I've mapped out that kind of works for me coming up here. So when the pandemic hit, I had to move all my teaching online, and I needed to get an audio interface. And the one that I chose was the Mackie Pro FX, and I have the 6-channel version of that. What I like about it is that there was no software to download. So I literally plugged it into my computer, and my computer settings picked up that it was being used as an audio interface for headphones and microphone, and I didn't have to do anything to it. It was just all there. Whereas I tried other audio interfaces before, and there's software and there's upgrades, and then things don't work after a while. So this one, for me, at least, knock on wood, so far, it has been really easy to use, and that is usually my number one priority. I also think it sounds fine. It does the job that I need. So my setup with that is that I have my amp plugged into my audio interface, and my amp has Bluetooth on it. So I use my iPad to if I need any backing tracks or metronome or anything, I have my iPad being Bluetooth signaled into my amp along with my guitar, and then that goes into the audio interface / mixer, and then that goes directly into my computer. So that's how I get that sound and all of those sounds. My headphones, these are Audio-Technica, and I picked broadcasting headphones because I like to move around when I'm teaching, and I tried using a regular microphone for about 10 minutes when I was teaching one lesson, and I just found that, my student was complaining about not being able to hear me very well, and I thought that was ridiculous. So I know it looks a little funny to, have this whole broadcaster I feel like an airplane pilot sometimes headset on, but over the years I've gotten really comfortable with it, and I have been complimented on the sound quality. And when you're asking a student to play a B or versus a D, sometimes just having that extra clarity is worth having this contraption on my head. I play flat wound strings, I have for years, and I've played D'Addario chromes for a long, long time. But then I found these Tomastic infields, I think it was last summer, and I just really liked them. They're a bit more expensive, so I don't change my strings very often. And the gauge that I use, it's a 10 gauge, which is, I didn't even know that they made flat wounds at that low of a gauge. But I find it really helpful. Again, I've had, hand injuries, and I appreciate small guitars that are easy to play, so why not have strings that are also easy to play on as well? And I like those strings. They seem to be lasting. I've put them on all of my guitars now, and they're comfortable. They're very smooth sounding. There's about, 3 or 4 days where they're maybe a little too bright for me, but that wears off. And again, they last a very long time. The picks that I use are these Dunlap prime tones, and they are very, very thick and they're very small, and they have a very rounded tip on them. And I have played a variety of picks over the years, like most guitar players, and maybe by the time I watch this video, I'll have moved on to a different kind of pick. But for the most part, these have been my go-to picks for, maybe 4 or 5 years now. I really like the sound. I can't, they get the warmest sound that I've ever found. They have a little indentation there for your fingers, and there's a little, there's some not grip, but there's some traction that you can get there from the pattern that they've printed on here. I like these clip-on tuners. This one is TC Polytune, and the name means that once you turn it on, you could actually strum the whole guitar, and it'll show you an overall picture of where the guitar is and its tuning range. I actually never use that function. I just tune it one string at a time, and it works really well. It's very accurate. None of these are indestructible, so you always have to be very careful with these. But the great thing about the clip-on tuners is that they don't pick up the sound. They don't have a microphone in them. They pick up the vibrations. So it's great for practicing and tuning up in loud situations. I never have to worry about an audience or, the radio or another guitar or anything. It's always going to be very accurate. Now, as far as metronomes go, people who know me know that I love my metronomes. I'm a big fan of the Korgs. I don't think they make the kind that I was really into anymore. These days, I mostly just use the metronome that I have an app for. I think it's called Pro Metronome or Metronome Pro, but there's all kinds of free ones out there. Kind of a neat one, newer one is called Time Guru, and it's really cool because it drops out the beat. So it'll be, clicking along, and then all of a sudden it'll drop out for a while. And that allows the musician practicing to really hone their sense of internal time. So I think it's a couple bucks, but I think it's worth it as well. I think the most important thing when you're choosing a metronome is to make sure that you get one that has a sound that you like. I'm not a fan of the beeps, so that does not make me want to groove. But a nice solid click, that's what I'm looking for. Those seem to make me want to groove and want to play and practice with a metronome. If you know me, then you know I like to be comfortable. And this guitar strap that I have currently on is probably the most comfortable guitar strap I've ever seen or used. And I will put the link below. It's Neotech, and it's just really squishy. It evens things out really nicely. Sometimes I don't even feel like I'm wearing a guitar, which is really, really cool. I had to take this one into a shoe repair shop to get it shortened just a little bit, because again, I'm tiny and I needed an adjustment made to even their smallest strap. You may not need that, but just as a note, you may want to keep in mind that shoe repair shops are awesome for repairing things like guitar straps, guitar cases, zippers, all those things that, it's harder to do on our own. The other thing that I use quite often is just a guitar pillow. And, this just helps raise the guitar to a level that feels really comfortable for me. So those are my two go-tos right now for comfort, playing, and teaching.